Hi, I'm Dan.
And it's time to start digging!
Dan Mosier here. And welcome to Poetry Minute with Daniel. Today we'll be discussing the poem Charge of the Light Brigade by Alfred Lord Tennyson. Really? How do guys sit like that? It's so uncomfortable. But I do want to talk about the poem Charge of the Light Brigade. Let me give you a brief summary of the historical facts that led to Alfred Lord Tennyson writing the poem. You see, Britain and France were fighting Russia in the Crimean War. Britain was lined up to engage in a battle with Russia, and there was an order given, but it got confused. It was that the Light Brigade was supposed to charge against a Russian part of their defense. Unfortunately, because of the confusion, they charged right at the main defenses of Russia, across a valley which is now known as the Valley of Death. Alfred Lord Tennyson captured that battle in his poem, Charge of the Light Brigade. Half a league, half a league, half a league onward, all in the Valley of Death, rode the 600. For the Light Brigade, charge for the guns, he said, into the Valley of Death, rode the 600. Forward the Light Brigade, was there a man dismayed? Not, though the soldiers knew someone had blundered. Theirs not to make a reply, theirs not to reason why, theirs but to do and die. Into the Valley of Death rode the 600. Cannon to the right of them, cannon to the left of them, cannon in front of them, volleyed and thundered, stormed at with shot and shell, boldly they rode and well. Into the jaws of death, into the mouth of hell, rode the 600. Flashed all their sabers bare, flashed as they turned in air, sabering the gunners there, charging an army while all the world wondered. Plunged into the battery smoke, right through the line they broke. Cossack and Russian reeled from the saber stroke, shattered and sundered. Then they rode back, but not the 600. Cannon to the right of them, cannon to the left of them, cannon behind them, volleyed and thundered, stormed at with shot and shell, while horse and hero fell. They that had fought so well came through the jaws of death, back from the mouth of hell. All that was left of them, left of 600. When can their glory fade? Oh, the wild charge they made! All the world wondered. Honor the charge they made. Honor the Light Brigade. Noble 600. Upon hearing that poem, a man made a simple statement. It's quite a thing to ride straight at death. I think of this time of year when the Christmas season is all but over and the New Year has come. And what thought people did give of Jesus during the Christmas season, we've probably forgotten. But you see, Jesus did more than just stay a baby in the manger. He's actually sent on a mission, one that was no mistake. He didn't ride across the valley of death. He came to the earth of death to ride straight towards Satan's defenses. And he conquered Satan through his death. Philippians chapter 2, verse 7 says, "Instead he emptied himself by assuming the form of a slave, taking on the likeness of men, and when he had come as a man in his external form, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even to death on a cross." And through that death, Jesus can now ride alongside of us to free us from what Satan is trying to bind us with and to give us victory over death. So until next time, thank you for joining me for poetry. How do guys even sit like that? So uncomfortable.
I was buried beneath my chains. Who could carry that kind of weight? It was my tomb till I met you. And I was breathing but not alive. All my failures I've tried to hide. It was my tomb till I met you. You called my name and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. Call my name and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. Now your mercy has saved my soul. Your freedom is all that I know. Jesus, when I met you, you called my name and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. Verse 2. Now your mercy has saved my soul. Now your freedom is all that I know. The old made new. Jesus, when I met you, you called my name and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. I needed rescue, my sin was heavy, chains break at the weight of your glory. I needed shelter, I was an orphan, now you call me a citizen of heaven. Now I was broken, you were my healing, your love is the air that I'm breathing. I have a future, my eyes are open, 'cause when you call my name, oh, I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness, into your glorious day.
I've carried a burden for too long on my own. I wasn't created to bear it alone. I hear your invitation to let it all go, and I see it now. I'm laying it down. All I knew is I need you, so I run up, Father. I fall into grace. I'm done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, my soul needs a friend, so I'll run to the Father again and again and again and again. You saw my condition, had a plan from the start. Your son for redemption, the price for my heart. I don't have a context for that kind of love. I don't understand, I can't comprehend. All I know is I need you, so I run to the Father. I fall into grace. I'm done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, my soul needs a friend, so I'll run to the Father again and again, and I run to the Father. I fall into grace. I'm done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, my soul needs a friend, so I'll run to the Father again and again and again and again. Oh, and again and again and again. We run. Cause my heart has been in your sights long before my first breath, running into your arms is running to life from death. 'Cause I feel this rush deep in my chest. Your mercy is calling out, just as I am. You pull me in. I know I need you now, so I run to the Father, fall in passion. My soul found its friend, so I'll run to the Father again and again and again and again. Help remind us, God, that you're the one we need to be running to. Praying to God, you're the one we need to go to when we're so worried. Help remind us, God, that you meet our needs. You're the surgeon to our heart. You're the friend to our soul, God. Nothing else can fill that void, God, that we have. We thank you, Jesus.
Light of the world, you step down into darkness and open my eyes, let me see beauty that made this heart adore you, hope of a life spent with you. Here I am to worship, and here I am to bow down, and here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely and altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. King of all days, oh so highly exalted, glorious in heaven above. Humbly you came to the earth you created, all for love's sake became. Here I am to worship, here I am to bow down, here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. I'll never know how much it costs to see my sin upon that cross. And I'll never know how much it costs to see my sin upon that cross. And I'll never know how much it costs to see my sin upon that cross. I'll never know how much it costs to see my sin upon that cross. So here I am to worship, here I am to bow down, here I am to say, you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. And here I am to worship, here I am to bow down, Here I am to say, you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me.
Hi, I'm Dan.
And it's time to start digging!
Dan Mosier here. And welcome to Poetry Minute with Daniel. Today we'll be discussing the poem Charge of the Light Brigade by Alfred Lord Tennyson. Really, how do guys sit like that? It's so uncomfortable. But I do want to talk about the poem Charge of the Light Brigade. Let me give you a brief summary of the historical facts that led to Alfred Lord Tennyson writing the poem. You see, Britain and France were fighting Russia in the Crimean War. Britain was lined up to engage in a battle with Russia, and there was an order given, but it got confused. It was that the Light Brigade was supposed to charge against a Russian part of their defense. Unfortunately, because of the confusion, they charged right at the main defenses of Russia, across a valley which is now known as the Valley of Death. Alfred Lord Tennyson captured that battle in his poem Charge of the Light Brigade. Half a league, half a league, half a league onward, all in the Valley of Death, rode the 600. For the Light Brigade, charge for the guns, he said, into the Valley of Death, rode the 600. Forward the Light Brigade, was there a man dismayed? Not, though the soldiers knew someone had blundered. Theirs not to make a reply, theirs not to reason why, theirs but to do and die. Into the Valley of Death rode the 600. Cannon to the right of them, cannon to the left of them, cannon in front of them, volleyed and thundered, stormed at with shot and shell, boldly they rode and well. Into the jaws of death, into the mouth of hell, rode the 600. Flashed all their sabers bare, flashed as they turned in air, sabering the gunners there, charging an army while all the world wondered. Plunged into the battery smoke, right through the line they broke. Cossack and Russian reeled from the saber stroke, shattered and sundered. Then they rode back, but not the 600. Cannon to the right of them, cannon to the left of them, cannon behind them, volleyed and thundered, stormed at with shot and shell, while horse and hero fell. They that had fought so well came through the jaws of death, back from the mouth of hell. All that was left of them, left of 600. When can their glory fade? Oh, the wild charge they made! All the world wondered. Honor the charge they made. Honor the Light Brigade. Noble 600. Upon hearing that poem, a man made a simple statement. It's quite a thing to ride straight at death. I think of this time of year when the Christmas season is all but over and the New Year has come. And what thought people did give of Jesus during the Christmas season, we've probably forgotten. But you see, Jesus did more than just stay a baby in the manger. He's actually sent on a mission, one that was no mistake. He didn't ride across the valley of death. He came to the earth of death to ride straight towards Satan's defenses. And he conquered Satan through his death. Philippians chapter 2, verse 7 says, "Instead he emptied himself by assuming the form of a slave, taking on the likeness of men, and when he had come as a man in his external form, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even to death on a cross." And through that death, Jesus can now ride alongside of us to free us from what Satan is trying to bind us with and to give us victory over death. So until next time, thank you for joining me for poetry. How do guys even sit like that? It's so uncomfortable.
How are we doing this morning, everybody? Good morning, good morning, good morning. So great to see you all here. This is the first Sunday of the new year. Welcome to River of Life Fellowship. My name is Pastor George Gray, and I am one more time here in my office. This will be the last time, hopefully, for us in my office. And then we'll be broadcasting from the sanctuary with the live worship team. And the obvious first question I want to deal with this morning for announcements as we get going is, when are we getting back in person? If you did not see the posting on Facebook a little while ago, last Monday, the board and I got together and we discussed this very topic. And what we agreed to do, what we all thought was the best thing to do, was to set the date for us getting back in person to January 31st, which is the last Sunday of the month. And I know that seems like a long way out, but really it's only a couple of weeks. The reason we did that is really simple. From our conversations with the Lewis County Health Department, Department of Public Health, we've been trying really hard to work with them as closely as we can in kind of a partnership. Not letting them dictate what's going on at the church, but partnering with the county to do the most we can in order to help this situation. And after Thanksgiving, there was a predictable spike in cases throughout our county and area. There was even right after Christmas. It was pretty obvious, and they were anticipating another pretty sizable spike after New Year's. Now, typically, what ends up happening is at that point, you got a couple of weeks before people figure out what's going on and get past whatever illness they have, if they get COVID themselves. And so what we wanted to do was get beyond that, because what we didn't want to do was open and then have to close. That's the last thing we want to do. When we open, we want it to be what we're setting up for the rest of the year. Our goal is this is the last time that we would be closing down. So the idea is to get to that point, and that seems to be the best time as far as for this happening. So that's what's going to happen. Now, a few things about that particular reopening. It will be at a reduced number because of the requirements of the CDC in the state, what they're asking us to do. So we haven't quite figured out how to make that happen yet. So the number is like 85, 90-ish. And so we're trying to figure out how to make that happen and make that available to everyone. So we're working those details out. As soon as we have them, we will post them and get to you. We'll see what happens at that point. So that is kind of where we are at the moment. Until then, here we are, and we're going to be doing the best we can with what we have, because we're going to be honoring God no matter what is going on in the world around us. So with that being said, last week I also mentioned to church members, you should have received by now a letter with some basic voting information about the business meeting for this year. Many of you have sent those back in already. Thank you very much. I've actually got quite a few of them. If you could send those back as soon as possible, whatever your voting decision is, if you have the letter, you understand what I'm talking about. Whatever your voting decision is, we just need to know so we know how to proceed in the coming weeks. So if you think you should have gotten one of those letters, give me a call at the church at 688-4500. And if you can get those back to me as soon as you can, that would be great. So, also, over the next 3 weeks, it is our tradition here at the church to do a fast for the first 3 weeks of the year. So, not a whole lot going on at the church. I'm not doing my podcast until this is over. The idea of setting time aside to seek God is just that, setting a time aside to seek God. And this process and this time, I really would recommend to you, if you are part of the fast, if you are going to be doing this, I really do recommend that you make a concerted effort to do less in your daily life throughout these next few weeks. There's a reason for this. Fasting is not just being hungry. We're going to be talking about this here a little bit this morning. Fasting is not just being hungry or not eating. Fasting is an intentional process which we slow down our lives and we redirect that attention towards the Lord. So I really want to encourage you to brush away things that don't need to be happening in your life during this time, and make time to not only seek after, but to also hear from God. And that leads me into today's message. The title of today's message is The Hows and Whys of Fasting. So this is, I think this is going to be a lot of fun. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be introducing you to the process of fasting, what we do, how we do it, why we do it. And, when I was thinking about how do you introduce this idea of fasting in a lighthearted way that might get people's attention, and I figured that, although we've done this a few times, I'm going to do it again. So here you go.
I think fasting's awesome. I mean, where else can you combine spirituality and dieting all in the same way? I mean, it gets a bound rap, pound for pound, it does. People think it's for monks or supermodels and stuff like that. But I'm here to tell you it's for everybody. Last summer, I had a 20-year reunion / barbecue / swim party to go to, and I'd done but had to drop about 85 pounds. So thanks to fasting, what has 2 thumbs and look good in a swimsuit? This guy. Thank you, Jesus.
Fasting? Yeah. I mean, I think it's great to skip a meal or two so you can hear God's voice better, stay plugged into Him. Yeah.
Some people fast from phones and music and gadgets.
But that's not a sacrifice. That's not even biblical. I mean, that's crazy talk, I mean, God gave us this stuff so we could stay plugged into Him, maximize our lives.
It also keeps us busy enough to never be still or quiet.
Are you even a Christian?
I dare you to fast from your phone for 1 minute.
Fine. Minute. You got it. No biggie. I don't care. I probably should take that.
I fast. Okay, that's a total lie. I don't even fast at all. Okay, I want to. Another lie. Don't even think about it. Deal is, I'm hypoglycemic and diabetic, and that's not even close to the truth at all, okay? Hey, even the Bible says, he who hopes dies fasting, right? Right? Okay, Benjamin Franklin said that right before he died. Bottom line, fasting makes me hungry.
Are we almost done?
Hello, I'm Brett Johansson, and I believe that fasting is one of the greatest spiritual disciplines one can achieve in their faith. When my family or friends invite me to go to lunch, I gently remind them and passive-aggressively admonish them by reminding them, did you not get my fasting notification email? Oh, that I had the luxury to eat lunch like you do. Every year around Easter, I go through a 40-day fast to heighten my sensation of the Easter holiday. This year, however, I've decided to tack on 10 extra days. So by the time we celebrate Resurrection Sunday, I will have been fasting for 50 whole days. If I survive.
In my fast, I have a very rigid schedule, and if you do not have a rigid schedule, then God does not approve. Some people like to cheat, and they drink flavored waters and juices within the fast. You must be drinking unfiltered well water, and if you do not drink unfiltered well water, God does not approve. In the afternoon, I put a cone of silence around me. I do not talk to anyone. Yes, that does annoy people. Yes, it does anger my coworkers. I am persecuted within my fast, and if you are not persecuted within the fast, God does not approve. When I get home, I go straight to my prayer closet. I do not talk to my wife. I do not play with the kids. I let them fend for themselves. And if the kids do not fend for themselves and the wife does not get talked to, God does not approve.
You know what? I'm going to ask nice one more time, and then I am not in control of what happens, okay? So give me the phone. Okay, fine. I need the phone. I need to call 911.
Okay, so there you have it, a little bit about fasting. So as we start today, let's take a couple of minutes to figure out, to make sure that we understand what fasting is not. Okay, so first of all, fasting is not a diet. It's not a way to try to lose weight with religious with a religious idea. It's just not the way it works. Okay, fasting is not a way to torture yourself to try to get God's attention. That's not how that works. And fasting is not a way to show the world around us how legalistic we can be or how over the top holy we are. You know, this is one of the reasons why we're told, don't tell people that you're fasting. Don't go around with sackcloth and ashes on your head saying, oh, if I would just, I'll probably not survive this fast. I'll probably wither away into nothing, but I'm doing it for Jesus. Don't do that. Fasting is an act of humility, and it is an act of discipline. Now, unfortunately, the secular world, for the most part, has taken the term fasting and started to apply it to things like weight loss and physical fitness. A lot of you have probably heard the term intermittent fasting as a way of dieting. So the idea of fasting has unfortunately been diluted a little bit because of the way the world has adopted the term. So what we want to do is make sure that we understand how God views fasting and how the church should be viewing fasting. So let's take a look at a couple of scriptures. So Joel 2:12 says, "Yet even now, says Adonai, turn to me with all your heart, with fasting, with weeping and lamenting." So God is asking us, this process of part of turning back to God can involve, God in himself is saying, turn back to me with fasting. Seek after me with all of your heart and show me with fasting and prove to me that you're meaning it, you know, not just some sort of activity, but show me that you're serious about seeking after me. Daniel 10:2-3, this is where we get part of the Daniel fast, says, "In those days I, Daniel, was mourning 3 full weeks." This is why we have 3 weeks. It says, "I ate no pleasant food, no meat or wine came into my mouth, nor did I anoint myself at all till 3 whole weeks were fulfilled." In Acts 14:23 reads that, "So when they had appointed elders in every church and prayed with fasting, they commended them to the Lord in whom they had believed." So one of the interesting things about fasting is that through most of Scripture, fasting is paired with prayer. So prayer and fasting is a combination that we should do our very best to keep together. There's no reason to take those two things and make them separate. Prayer and fasting pretty much always go hand in hand. And although it's true that seeking God, you can seek God with things other than fasting, things like going to a Bible study or having daily devotional plans are a form of pursuing God. Absolutely, they're completely legitimate. But what makes fasting so different? Why is fasting looked at so differently throughout Scripture? And it basically comes down to this, that fasting is simply not just about seeking after God, okay? Seeking after God is one half of the idea of fasting, but the other part of fasting is that it's about denying yourself something in the process. So it's not just wanting something from God, it's putting yourself in a position of humility and discipline in the process of seeking. So you're denying yourself while seeking after God. That's what makes fasting so very different. So I'll give you an example. Not eating is a diet, not a fast. Okay? If you're just not eating, and that's all you're doing, you're dieting, you're not fasting. Not eating in order to make time to pray and read the word, seek after God, is fasting, not dieting. You see the difference? The idea is that you're putting something aside in order to open up space in your life for something more meaningful. Now, that does not mean, let me just say this really quickly, that does not mean if you're going to fast lunch, which is a pretty common thing, that, if you normally eat lunch at between 12 and 1, and now you're going to spend 12 to 1 reading the Bible and praying, that doesn't mean at 1 o'clock you go get lunch. Okay, that means you deny yourself that meal. You don't just have it later. You deny yourself the meal, and that doesn't mean that you have lunch at 11. To kind of prepare yourself. That's not what it means. It means you intentionally take that meal and you put it aside, or whatever it is that you're fasting. You put it aside and you don't come back to it because it is now an offering to God in the process of seeking Him. So we're willingly denying ourselves these things while we're seeking God. So there are several benefits to fasting that I want to take a look at. Now, fasting and prayer helps us hear from God. Now, in this way, fasting is a lot like having a conversation in a crowded room. Now, in order to hear, you have to be very intentional. When you're in a room full of people and everyone's talking, there's all this background noise, and sometimes you even start tuning into conversations you're not even part of. And hopefully it's not something that's willful. You're just doing it because it's a natural human reaction. But when you're trying to have a conversation face-to-face with someone in a crowded room, you have to be very intentional about that conversation. Even though you can't shut everything off around you, you can, and we all know this, you can tune everything out. You push it off to the side to make room to hear the person that you're speaking to. You're tuning out the noise in order to be more engaged with the person to whom you are speaking. So after a while, you might not even hear the noise anymore. You're just with them. You've been able to get all the rest of it out of your life. Now, when we fast, we are making the choice to tune out the noise and focus on the things of God. So fasting and prayer can help us hear from God better. Fasting and prayer can reveal our hidden sin. This is a little bit more difficult for us to come to terms with, but this is a reality. If you think about this, what happens when you clean out a room in your house? Let's say you're moving stuff around, you're trying to get things, maybe cleaned up for the spring, and you start, you pull the couch out, you pull the bed out, you pull the dresser away from the wall or whatever. What happens when you start doing this? Inevitably, you start finding things that you forgot were there. Or maybe they're things that you knew perfectly well they were there. They were in that room. You just gave up looking for them because you couldn't figure out where the heck they were. You've looked and looked and looked, and you just, you know what? They're in there somewhere. I'll find them eventually. When you make time for God, God is a God of righteousness. And when He begins to reveal things to us, some of the ways that He primarily speaks to us is identifying areas in our lives that are not okay with Him. He points out that lack of righteousness in our life. So God can open up our eyes to things in our lives that maybe we have overlooked or maybe we have given up fighting against. You know what? How many times have you heard this? This is just who I am. Now, I don't need to get into a whole lot of detail, but there's a big move within the church about certain lifestyles and how, you know what? I'm not going to fight this anymore because this is just who I am, which is a lie. Because that's not who you are. It's who Satan wants you to think you are. But the reality is, when God brings those things back to us, He's bringing them back to us in order for us to help purify our lives, to get things out of our lives that don't need to be there. So when he identifies these sins in our lives, He's not doing it as a gotcha kind of a thing. He's doing it because He loves us. Now, maybe it's a habit you've picked up. Maybe it's some language you need to get rid of. Maybe you started returning to old habits. Now, you might not realize this, but as we live our lives as Christians, we can go through our life and things can get very comfortable and very normal, and then we can actually get to a point where we're so comfortable in our faith, our old life begins to work its way back in. We pick up old habits. We start hanging out with people that we know we probably shouldn't be hanging out with, and we start hanging out in places that we know are probably not a good addition to our witness. We'll just say that. Now, an uncomfortable truth is that sometimes we have to. The thing that God is trying to get us to confront is that one thing that we are refusing to confront. Sometimes the very thing that God is trying to get you to focus on is the thing you don't want to focus on, because you know that once you do, you've got to do something about it. So as we begin to fast, as we begin to seek God, God is going to push away all of these things in our lives and bring out that little thing he might want you to deal with that you've been hoping he may not have noticed, but he's known it the entire time. Fasting will help you identify those things, and what you do with it at that point is really up to you. Fasting and prayer can strengthen our intimacy with God. Now, you think about this, when we're dating someone, we're willing to set aside all kinds of things in order to spend time with them, right? You'll take extra time off from work. You'll not hang out with friends when you're trying to get close with someone. The more time you spend with someone, the more naturally you will draw close to that person. Now, what we do is we learn to trust them, and we learn to trust that they care for us. The idea of drawing close to someone because of what we do for them, it's not necessarily what God is trying to do. What God is trying to do with us as we spend time with him is help us understand that he cares for us individually more than what we do for him. So let me give you an example of this. Matthew 6:27-34 reads like this. It says, can any of you, by worrying, add a single hour to his life? And why be anxious about clothing? Think about the fields of wild irises and how they grow. They neither work nor spin thread. Yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all of his glory was clothed as beautifully as one of these. If this is how God clothes the grass in the field, which is here today and gone tomorrow, thrown in an oven, won't he much more clothe you? What little trust you have. That's very encouraging, isn't it? He says, so don't be anxious, asking what will we eat, what will we drink, or how will we be clothed? For it is the pagans who set their hearts on all of these things. Our Heavenly Father knows you need them all, but first seek his kingdom. First seek his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow will worry about itself. Today has enough trouble already. So the world tells us to worry about all of these things. And it's interesting that the things that the world tells us to worry about, God says, don't even pay attention to those. Seek me, and I will take care of the rest of those details. But seek me first. This is what fasting does for us. It clarifies our goals. It clarifies our priorities. And it puts us in a place where we begin to trust God more. When we stop seeking after these things for ourselves, we learn to trust God. If we are truly in God's hands, then we should probably allow ourselves to be in God's hands. Another thing that fasting does is fasting and prayer can teach us to pray with right motives. Do you know that you can pray with wrong motives? It happens, right? So an interesting thing that people tend to be, people tend to be more serious about things that cost them something. And maybe you've noticed this with your own children. In Matthew 6:21, it says, "For where your wealth is, there your heart will be also." Okay, so where your treasure is, there your heart will be. Not where your heart is, your treasure will be. It's where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So one of the interesting things is, if you want to start drawing closer to God, is that process costing you something? And I'm not talking about money. So I might be talking about time or resources or your things that you personally value. This is the benefit of fasting. You take these things that you value and you push them off to the side to make room for God. So we've put our treasure in this idea of seeking God, and that is why we're more apt to be more committed in this process. So if you think about this, you give a kid a bike, they might leave it out in the rain. You make that kid work for the bike. They got to go to work. They got to save up money. Then they buy it themselves. Chances are they're going to take care of that bike just a little bit more because now they have a stake in it. They've done something for it. Now, fasting has value, doesn't it? Fasting has lasting value. It is work. Fasting is work. If your fast is not work for you, if it doesn't cause you to do things differently in your life, then you might want to check whether or not you're actually fasting. it takes seeking after God to a new level within our lives, right? So the more seriously you take your fast, the more of a price you end up paying for that. Excuse me. Now, for those of you who have been doing this for a while, you know what I mean. If you're new to fasting, you might be thinking, I don't understand this whole idea of cost and paying the price, things like that. As you get into the fast, as you spend more time doing it, you will realize that yes, this does have a cost to it. At the beginning, it's not that difficult. Most people agree that the first week of a fast can be tough because you're kind of reorienting your life. That middle week is okay because you're kind of into a pattern, but that last week, you're just like, oh my gosh, what is, because you're starting to think, especially if you're fasting food, you're starting to think about like things you want to eat and where you want to go. And, gosh, I'm going to get wings and pizza and I'm going to go here and there. And your mind is like already after the fast. So in order to stay in the discipline, there's a price you pay. You have to fight off that desire to cut it short, so to speak. So it's far less about what you're giving up and much more about the discipline within the seeking. So fasting can teach us to pray with right motives because as we get into the fast, things that cost you a greater deal, you tend to not want the nonsense stuff. So in the midst of a fast, one of the things that I've noticed is that I'm not concerned about the language of my prayers. I'm not concerned about the version of the Bible that I tend to be reading at the time. I'm more concerned about getting close to God. I'm more concerned about connecting. I don't need to put a whole lot of these and thous and those in my prayer language. I'm really just talking to God. I've cut out the nonsense and I've gotten straight to the details. Fasting has a tendency of doing that. Fasting and prayer can also build your faith. Now, you think about this. Everything worth building requires time and dedication. Everything worth building. If you build something too quickly, chances are it doesn't last, right? And if you build it without a lot of care and dedication, it's not going to be what you want at the end. So think about this. If you want a strong marriage, spend time with your spouse. You give up things you might rather be doing to spend time with your spouse. Living in the same house does not mean you have a strong marriage any more than attending a church means that you have a strong faith. Just because your body happens to be in a specific location doesn't mean that your attitude and your character and your life has actually given itself over to that situation. You can be in the same room with people you care about and not be connected with them at all. So if you want a strong relationship with the Lord, what are you willing to give up in order to make that happen? In order for a fast to have value, the thing that you're fasting has to have value. It has to have value to you. I'm not talking about how much something costs or anything like that. I'm talking about it has to have value to you. So it's about there's an acceptable degree of discomfort that comes with fasting. It should be there, right? Now, think about this. If I decide for this year that I'm going to fast boiled eggplant. This year, I'm getting serious about my fast. I'm going to fast boiled eggplant. You see, that fast will have no value to me, and it will also yield no results because you won't catch me anywhere near eggplant. I think it's disgusting. Now, keep in mind, I was a chef for a long time, and I have a reason why I think eggplant is disgusting. I've never had it in a way that actually tastes good, and yuck. Blah. Yeah, I'm just going to move right along. You see, that fast has nothing, it's got no value to me. It's costing me nothing. I'm giving up something that means nothing to me. Now, I can't expect my fast to bring me closer to the Lord if my fast does not impact my life in any way. So you think about this. If there's something in your life, as you were preparing for this, if you're thinking, I'm going to fast this because there's no way I'm going to fast that, I'd be willing to bet that God is asking you and trying to get you to give up that. Like, that's the thing that you probably need to be giving up during this time of fasting because that thing has got so much value to you that you don't want to let it go. That is how a fast becomes impactful in your life. And that's the kind of fast that's going to build faith in your life, okay? So now, there's some details of the whys, So here's some how, some different types of fasts. A lot of people fast food, not fast food, fast food. Okay. So for centuries, this has been the gold standard. People fast food. Now you think about up all through time, up to about 150 years ago. Think about how important food was in our daily lives. You think about this. You may have only eaten one normal meal a day. Food was a very labor-intensive part of our normal life. For a lot of history, if you wanted a steak, you had to hunt it down and kill it first. If you wanted bread, you had to find a place where there was wheat or someplace where you could get flour. Then you had to mill it. This could be an all-day thing. So food was very, very important to our lives, and giving up meals was a big deal. There are several different types of food fasts, and we're going to take a look at those. But one of the things I'd like you to be thinking about while we're talking about this is food really that big a deal for you? For some of you, it is, but I'd be willing to bet for many of you, food isn't that big of a deal. There are other things that are more impactful to you than just food. We'll talk about those in a few minutes. So when you're dealing with food fast, there's a couple different types. There's the complete food fast, and that means that what this is a very serious way to fast. It means that you are giving up all food and drink except for water. This is not for the novice, and this is nothing that should be done for an extended period of time. I've rarely done anything like this. Now, and if you have medical conditions like diabetes or hypoglycemia or things like this is not something that I would recommend for you, especially if you're new to fasting. Typically, a water fast is going to be for a couple of days, not for a huge, long, extended period of time, because there are certain things that your body needs, especially if you have, like I said, medical conditions. So you want to be careful in what you're doing. You want to understand what it is you're getting into, okay? Now, another type of food fast is a partial fast, and this is basically like the Daniel fast. It's when you abstain from certain types of food, like dairy, sugar, flour, things like that. Maybe soda is the thing for you, or coffee, or maybe just caffeine in general. Just remember, if you're fasting caffeine, something that you might want to think about is to drink lots of water in order to flush your system so that you can get past the monstrous headaches that are heading your way as soon as possible, okay? If you're fasting caffeine, especially coffee, and you're a real serious coffee drinker or a soda drinker, just keep in mind that ice pick that feels like it's going into your eye to the back of your head, that's the effect of caffeine on your life. This is called a detox. So when we're doing these types of fasts, we have to remember that our bodies are going to react, and this is part of the struggle, getting through that, not just giving in. Can't deal with it anymore. I'm having a cup of coffee. I'm not dealing with this headache. It's being able to get past that, and sometimes it's not easy, okay? Now, the key to a partial fast is not to get caught up in trying to figure out what you can eat, okay? Now, a Daniel fast is great, but I want to warn you not to spend your days trying to figure out what you can eat and spending the next 21 days looking at new, Daniel fast related recipes. That's great. That's wonderful. That's awesome. But the purpose of the fast is to clear time out of your life so that you can seek after God, not to clear time out of your life so that you can spend your day trying to figure out creative ways to cook legumes. Okay. You understand what I'm saying? So, a partial fast can be very beneficial, and it also can be, if you're thinking about a partial fast, if that's what God has laid on your heart, maybe God is trying to get you to adopt a lifestyle change. Maybe one of the things that God is trying to tell you is you have an unhealthy lifestyle, you have an unhealthy eating habits, and maybe God wants to help you understand through this fast how much better you can feel if you actually put good fuel into your body. Just a thought. So a liquid fast is another type of fast, and that's when you only take in what you can drink. Okay, things like fruit juices, smoothies, stuff like that. This can be more challenging than you think, especially if you are a snacker. Okay, because we like to be eating things. Maybe you like chips and stuff like that, and after a few days, drinking your meals might be a little bit, what's going on. But today there are several companies out there that make meal replacements. smoothies. I think Isogenics is probably one of them. Nutrisystem I think has some other stuff. So there's good places to start that will help you along this path. So that's something to think about if you're thinking about a liquid fast. Now, on a side note, just for you guys, putting a steak in a blender is not part of a liquid fast. I just want to make sure we're very, very clear on that. Trying to figure out how to take chili and reduce it down to a smoothie. A chili smoothie is not really a smoothie. I don't know, I guess it could be if you put enough sour cream in it, but I wouldn't recommend it, I guess is what I'm saying. That's not how to do a liquid fast. Some of you are thinking about trying it right now. I'm not saying that it's good, but let me know how it turns out. So now today, food is still a very valid fast, and these things that we just talked about are very valid in the process. But for some, it's not much to give up a meal here or there. The value of a meal today is not really the same as it used to be. For some people, this is just not that big of a deal. I mean, give you an idea. I've gone a whole day, and most of you have probably done the same thing and forgotten to eat. So having meals throughout the day is not that big a deal, mainly because what we do eat today is much more vitamin and nutrient rich than what they would have been eating back in the first century and in biblical times. So the effect on our body is not necessarily as significant today as it would have been then. So for today, what some things that other people are giving up that can be much more difficult is media. So for just to give you an idea, during this 21-day period, Samantha and I have turned off our TV, we've disabled our social media accounts, and we're not paying attention to any of that stuff. And I got to tell you, that's far more difficult than you think. We used to we'd sit down and we'd have dinner watching Shark Tank, because it was fun. It was this, and now we're like, what are we doing? It's 5 o'clock. What are we gonna do the next 5 hours? And what you start to realize is, wow, I took up a huge portion of my day with garbage, with literally doing nothing. And you think, wow, okay, so this is far more of a sacrifice than a meal. Now we're doing things with our diet as well, but for us, the big part was the media side of things. You think about TVs and movies and sports. Wait, did he just say sports? Yes, guys, I said sports. Does Pastor know that it's the end of the football season, and this was a rough season? I'm not giving up sport. I'm not giving up football. I don't know. What are you, a communist? What's going on? I don't know how you can even say something like that. Think about this. What would happen in your life if you unplugged your TV for the next 3 weeks? And yes, guys, that would include football. What would happen? Some of you, your hearts just palpitated. Some of you are thinking about clicking away from the channel right now. Don't do that. Keep listening. Now think about this. For some parents, maybe the thought of not having the electronic babysitter is just too horrible of an idea to even think about, right? But maybe that is exactly what your kids might need. Now, maybe you do something that's a little bit modified. How many of you have dinner in the living room watching TV, and that's where everybody is? Maybe you try something different, like turning the TV off, even for just a certain portion of the day, and you have dinner at the table where you all talk and you discuss your day. You kind of catch up and figure out what's going on in people's life. What'd you do in school today? What happened at work? And you have these dialogues where you actually teach kids to communicate with their mouths using words with other people, even adults. It's an amazing process. And at the same time, if the TV's off, kids might actually. This doesn't happen a lot. This is a secret that has been handed down for generations, for thousands and thousands of years, that sometimes kids will go outside and they'll do things that require using their imagination that doesn't necessarily come from the digital screen that's on their desk somewhere in their room, or maybe that little digital thing that keeps their attention that's in their pocket or whatever. There are things that can entertain people that don't involve the phone or the internet. I know it's crazy, right? It's totally crazy talk. But maybe one of the things your kids might need during this time is to literally unplug from that digital world and the influence of the digital world, and learn how to maybe be kids, maybe be friends, have conversations, do things other than just play online. It's a thought. Maybe your family's not there, but I know some of you are thinking, yeah, you know what? This is probably exactly what we need to do. How about social media? Let me think about this. The average Facebook user today. Some of you are on Facebook right now. I get it, right? Pastor, you're on Facebook right now. No, I'm actually not. I'm streaming to Facebook, but I'm not on Facebook right now. So the average Facebook user checks their account 12 times a day. 12 times a day. You think about this. The average adult, by adult, I mean 18 to 30 years old, spends 3 hours a day on social media. Maybe not all at one time, but between Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Parler, etc., it's around 3 hours a day going back and forth and checking your feeds or posting something or whatever. You think about this. Some of you spend so much time in the bathroom scrolling through social media that your legs fall asleep. Stop laughing. I know some of you are laughing right now because it happens to you and it happens to other people that you know, and you're trying not to make it obvious that it's you, but it's fine. If it's you, put up a high five and everyone else will know it's you too. You think about this. 20 years ago, if someone would have said that in a few years, people will watch YouTube on their phone in the bathroom for hours on end, you would have laughed at them. It would have been ridiculous. You wouldn't even be thinking about it. But here we are, and the guilty among us, who you are. But think about this. Our lives have become so momentary. We become so momentary that we live for the high of the moment, the high of what's happening in this minute or this, what's going to make me smile or laugh right now, where we've forgotten what it means to enjoy a moment and make it last. You think about things. When was the last time you just sat down and did nothing on purpose? Think about that just for a second. When was the last time you sat down and you did nothing on purpose? Now, this is one of the big challenges when it comes to getting rid of the media influence in your life, your TV, your Facebook, your Instagram, whatever. When you pull back from all of these things, how do you... Sean, that's really funny. So how do you unplug from that? And how do you spend time just doing nothing on purpose? And sometimes doing nothing on purpose might be as simple as having a cup of coffee in the morning on your porch while the sun rises. Pastor, it's in the middle of winter. It's too cold. You know what? I actually don't mind going out in the morning and watching the sunrise. One of my favorite things during the fall and this time of year is when I come into the church. I get to the church somewhere around 7 o'clock-ish, and I'll come in, and the sun will be rising. And the cool thing is, some mornings it will be rising right behind the windmills. You've been to the church, you know what I'm talking about. Be rising right behind the windmills, and it can be an amazing vista. Just the colors and everything are just amazing. And honestly, sometimes I'll sit there in my car for 5-6 minutes, just looking, doing nothing on purpose, and just being in awe of God's paintbrush. It's really, really awesome to see. And that idea of being able to be still is exceptionally important. Think about this. Matthew 11:28-30 says, Come to me, all you who are struggling and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, because I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Right? Psalm 4 verse 8 says, I will both lie down in peace and sleep, for you alone, O Lord, make me dwell in safety. How about Psalm 46:10? Be still and know that I am God. Be still and just know that I am God. Just be still. You think about all the chaos going on around us in this world and how much we are desiring to make something happen. We need to band together and make something happen. But God is saying, be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. How about Philippians 4:6-7? Be anxious for nothing, But for everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your request be made, let your request be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and mind through Christ Jesus. Throughout this time of prayer and fasting, there's one thing that I hope that I would like to see all of you remember. A huge part of any fast is getting yourself free from the noise that is always around us. This is why fasting is part of giving something up, is being able to get away, being able to separate yourself from things. Clearing space in order to clear your mind is a very valid, very important part of a fast. In the Gospel of Mark, chapter 6, Jesus sends out the disciples to minister throughout the land. When they all came back, they were so wound up and so excited to tell Jesus what they had done that some of them weren't even taking the time to eat. And listen to what Jesus says to them. This is after the disciples, after they have been serving God and then coming back to Jesus. They were so excited. This is what Jesus says to them. This is Mark chapter 6, verses 30 and 31. It says, Then the apostles gathered to Jesus and told him all things, both what they had done and what they had taught. And he said to them, listen to this, come aside by yourselves to a deserted place and rest for a while. For there were many coming and going, and they did not even have time to eat. Come away with me and rest for a while. Come away with me to a desolate place. Desolate place does not mean some place that is broken, or some place that is destroyed, or some place that is, upsetting or heartbreaking. A desolate place means away from everything, away from the noise, away from the distractions, away from your social media accounts, away from your Facebook, away from your Instagram, away from the TV, away from all of that stuff, away from the things that distract you from God. Come away and find rest. Rest for a while. Come and learn to be still. Come and learn to be quiet. Come and learn to just be and not always have to worry about what you're doing. This last year has been a monstrous challenge for all of us. We all know that. And all of us need to make an intentional effort to take time to come aside by ourselves and rest for a while, to come aside with Christ and rest for a while. This is such a huge portion of what we do, and such a huge portion of how this fasting time will become more valuable in your lives. You have to make the opportunity, you have to make the space, you have to get away from the noise and make an intentional effort to push all that aside and to focus in on God. It's not easy, but that's why it has value. If it was easy, it wouldn't have value. But because we make this intentional, especially during this time, I think God has something incredible for us, especially as we prepare for whatever craziness is coming for this year. Take this time and make a specific effort to press into God and push away the rest of the world, preparing ourselves for what's coming down the road. I think this is a great time to do it. I hope you are all going to be coming along with us. Next week, we're going to be talking about our direction for this year. I'm really excited about what's coming down the road. Lord bless you. Let me pray for you during this time. Lord, bless us as we seek your face as a church. Father, we ask for your spirit. We ask for your guidance. We ask for your direction. Lord, in this time of fasting, let us not get caught up in the idea of what we're giving up, Lord, but let us be caught up in the idea of what we're seeking. Let us set aside these things in humility. Let us set aside these things in the pursuit of discipline, and let us be focused on seeking you and getting closer to you during this time. We thank you for your spirit. We thank you for your work. We thank you for your work on the cross, Lord. We thank you that you are who you are, and that you've called us to be with you. Bless us during this time. Meet us in these days. We ask this in Jesus' precious name. Amen. Lord bless you all. I hope to see you next week. Have a great time. And those of you, remember, if you have your voting forms, please get those sent in. And so Lord bless you. See you next week. Bye-bye.